Okay, it's a couple minutes past the hour, so I wanted to go and get started. Again, good evening, good afternoon to everyone that's on the call. Thank you again for joining our first ever Alumni Forum. The Alumni Forum is a CU Pharmacy Alumni Association sponsored event highlighting innovations and new trends in the field of pharmacy as researched and developed by our school's faculty and alumni. We are really thrilled that you are taking the time today to connect with the CU Pharmacy alumni and the community. My name is Lokendra Upadhyay. I come to you from just outside Atlanta, where I have resided for the last 14 years with my wife and 4 kids. Though I'm out of Colorado, I've been part of the Alumni Association for many years. I graduated in 1990 initially, and have maintained a relationship with the alumni board. I received my Bachelor's of Arts in Molecular Biology from Boulder, a BS Pharmacy at the Health Science Center, for those that remember, on Colorado Boulevard. And I've also received in 2018, a PharmD degree through the non-traditional route. Real quickly, a background about myself. I started my career in retail and hospital, then focused on managed care and the PBM space. And now I find myself transitioned into the pharmacy benefit consulting world, where I assist health plans, employer groups, and with their medication management programs. So things like formulary, their trend, specialty utilization, et cetera. I've actually dabbled, and this is a very timely event that we're joining today, in pharmacy informatics, having implemented a pharmacy module for a health systems outside of the country. And so I have a little bit of experience, enough to be dangerous. So, and what's interesting is on the call today, we have over 70 registrants, 70 plus registrants. And it was actually 73 as of a couple of days ago. In that, we have 38 alumni, both pharmacy and non-pharmacy alumni, dating back to as far as 1964. So we have a really wide range of alumni here. We have students as well. We have staff, and then we have some donors. So I wanted to thank you all for taking the time to join us this evening. So enough about me. Let's get on with our program, because as they say, we've got a really good program tonight. Tonight's program will consist of a presentation, which will run roughly about 30 minutes or so, and then followed by a Q&A. We have received questions from the registrants ahead of time, so we have incorporated some of those into the presentation. So we'll address those questions. You can also ask questions in the chat box, which we'll review at the conclusion of the presentation. Lastly, I'll do my very best to keep the program within an hour, because I know many of us are taking time away from personal lives to be here, and we really do appreciate that. So on to the program. It is an honor for us to have today our very first presenter, CU Pharmacy faculty member and 2019 PhD alumna, Dr. Katy Trinkley. Her presentation, entitled Innovations in Technology and the Changing Practice of Pharmacy, will address how informatics has changed the practice of pharmacy in patient engagements and the reliance on automation in the advent of artificial intelligence and social media. Dr. Trinkley is an associate professor with CU Pharmacy. She graduated with her Doctor of Pharmacy from Purdue University and a PhD in Health Information Technology from the University of Colorado. She completed a residency and research fellowship at The Ohio State University. She is a primary care clinical pharmacist and the only clinical pharmacist informaticist at the University of Colorado. Dr. Trinkley's research focuses on leveraging data and implementation science to create innovative health information technology to optimize safe and effective medication use. Most of her research focuses on clinical decision support tools within the electronic health record to optimize therapies for chronic cardiovascular disease. She's proven not only to be an expert in the area, but also an influencer in the career path of several alumni in selecting informatics as a specialty area for pharmacy. So with that, help me welcome Dr. Katy Trinkley today.
Thank you, Dr. Padre. I am thrilled to be here today. And I see many familiar faces in the crowd. It's nice to see your faces or your names if you don't have your video on. Those of you that know me know that I get excited, but this is a particular area that I get extraordinarily excited about. And I'm sure that you'll hear my enthusiasm as we go through today. One of the things, I purposely kept this talk short because I think what's most important is to facilitate discussion. So we'll have a Q&A session, but many of your questions don't have solid answers. And so I really want to lean on you, your diverse experience, and facilitate discussion when we get to that point. So I'm excited to be here with you today and excited for what I hope is an active, lively discussion. I'm going to be talking about a number of different products, and I want to rest any of your concerns that I have no conflicts of interest or commercial interest in any of the products that I'm discussing. My goal today is that you're able to walk away and describe different ways automation and data are changing the practice of pharmacy and how we as a profession, how it has changed the way that we interact with patients as well. And also identify strategies to stay relevant as the practice of pharmacy evolves and will continue to do so. So this talk really starts from the fact that technology is doing things that we previously said it couldn't do. And so if you look to the 2004 seminal work by Levy and Murnane, in their work, they tried to delineate between what technology could do and what technology couldn't do. And as one of their concrete examples of what technology couldn't do, they said executing a left turn across incoming traffic involves so many factors that it's hard to imagine a set of rules that replicate a driver's behavior. But guess what? Where are we today? We have automated self-driving cars all over. Tesla. How many of you know someone that drives a Tesla? I know I certainly do. They're even becoming more affordable these days. But what they were trying to describe is the difference between tacit and explicit knowledge. Tacit knowledge is the creativity. It's part of what makes us uniquely human, but it's also the fuzzy. And in their minds, a left-hand turn across incoming traffic couldn't be objective or explicit. It couldn't be transformed into decision rules or an algorithm, but they were wrong. Another classic example that I'm sure many of you are familiar with is IBM's Watson. It's supercomputing machine, as many refer to it. Oftentimes I think we consider Watson to be a robot. It's not. It's a computing system that relies on artificial intelligence. And back in 2012, IBM released that, in fact, its supercomputing machine had already completed its second year of medical school, something that we didn't previously think technology could do. And not only that, since it completed medical school, it's gone on to complete many of the most elite, prestigious medical residencies, including in the oncology space in the US. And the interesting part about this is they said that IBM's computer brain, Watson, is training alongside doctors to do what they can't. That sounds very threatening. And the reality is, Watson can outperform physicians, top other field physicians, in doing certain things such as precision of diagnosis, or selecting the right medications, or finding clinical studies to enroll patients in. In some ways, it is outperforming us as clinicians. And these are just two concrete examples of where we are today in the fourth industrial revolution, which is also referred to as Industry 4.0. So just taking a step back to think about the different revolutions that we've already been through. In the first industrial revolution, it was mechanization, it was power, it was steam. And then in the second revolution, it was mass production. Electricity was introduced. The third revolution was computer and automation. And now where we're at today, Industry 4.0, it's the cyber physical. It's augmenting and accelerating computer and automation to do things that we previously didn't think it could do. And all of this has led the world to be often described as flat, fast, and smart. Flat because of connectivity, the Internet of Things, the ease at which we can FaceTime our grandchildren in China. So many things have changed. And so if you think back in history to the different revolutions, we are currently in one right now. And so how we react and how we adapt is important. So I want to take a minute to talk about disruptive innovation, because that's where we're at in Industry 4.0. And I want to channel one of my mentors, Mary Alice Bennett. She was the director of my residency program and a wonderful person. I'm sure many of you know who she is. She just received the Remington Award, which is the highest honor that anyone can achieve in the pharmacy profession, at the latest APHA annual meeting. And in her closing remarks, she encouraged people to look forward, to disrupt, to be the disruptors. We need to embrace disruptive innovation. The reality is the world is changing, and technology and its capability is growing at unprecedented rates. Moore's law, Moore was the co-founder of Intel, and in 1965, he said, the number of transistors incorporated in a chip will approximately double every 24 months. And in fact, we have exceeded this prediction, but yet Moore's law still is ingrained in everyday life in terms of the technology industry and in terms of forecasting the future. So as an example, when we think about our iPhone currently has more processing power than all of NASA did back in 1969 when we landed a man on the moon for Apollo. That's pretty remarkable. So although we've outgrown Moore's law and we are innovating and changing at a much faster rate, it's the principle that still holds, that we need to anticipate and look forward. We need to see how we can predict, although we can't predict, we wish we had a crystal ball, we need to be forward thinking and anticipate. At least be aware of what's currently going on and think how things could change. When we think about the practice of pharmacy, the diverse practice of pharmacy, it's changed so very much from our mortars and pestles that we used to have, our handwritten prescriptions. I have a prescription bottle for my grandmother with her name misspelled on it. Things have changed so much, and we forget where pharmacy used to be. But today, pharmacy, there's two key areas that pharmacy has changed drastically in. Centers around automation and how we engage with patients and how patients engage with us. There's so many changes that have happened and only more are going to happen. And this marks the Industry 4.0 for pharmacy. When we think about today's automated pharmacist, we are automated because of the computer systems that we rely on. We purposely, strategically have designed technologies to support each and every step of the medication use system, whether it's in a community pharmacy or if it's in a hospital. We've been using robots and cabinets, Pyxis machines for years. We have pharmacy information systems that help support us in the verification of our medications. They also help with the dispensing. Patients, the way we communicate with patients is also supported by automated systems. Patients might request refills through fully automated systems. We can even set up automated refill notifications and have that automatically mailed to a patient, all set on automation. In effect, if we were to, it is possible that a patient could be dispensed a medication from our community pharmacy without ever speaking to a human member of the pharmacy team. We have mail order, we have chat bots, we have all sorts of different ways for patients to interact with us. And this whole drone delivery thing. But then on the other side, we are automated in a different way. We have a wealth of information available at our fingertips because of automation. We have, in many ways, become reliant on these information systems to support our decision-making, whether you want to call it clinical decision support or resources or references. So much of it is curated and automated. We simply can go to UpToDate these days, or Medscape, or the pharmacist letter, and query for specific questions and get answers at our fingertips. We also have Dr. Google, of course. We can simply type in a query and get an answer so quickly. We also have, although we often speak of them not so wonderfully, we have alerts that support us. So you're in a pharmacy and there's a drug interaction alert or pop-up that comes up. Oftentimes we get annoyed, and that's what we hear, but in some sense, we become reliant on it as our safety net. We know if there's a major drug interaction, it's going to tell us. So with this automation does come some degree of reliance. But nonetheless, it has freed us up to really focus on our expertise. And while so much is already automated, the reality is so much more is going to continue to be automated, and anything that can be automated will be automated. So when you think about anything that can be put into an algorithm, that will be what's automated. Portions of what we currently do in our everyday workflow will slowly become automated. And as that happens, we will fill in that time with other things that require our expertise and can't be automated. I mean, who thought we could actually have a car make a left turn in front of oncoming traffic? But that could be put into an algorithm.
So Dr. Trinkley, I just wanted to field a question that aligns with your presentation at this point. So the question is from one of our registrants: a potential side effect of technological advances is that there may be fewer opportunities for interpersonal interaction, right? So how can pharmacists continue to build that relationship with patients and providers, seeing that there's a lot of that occurring with technology?
Absolutely. So much of our patient interactions are being replaced by automation. So how do we maintain that connection to patients? We find other ways. And what those ways are, I think depends on your setting and what your scope is. And really, our scopes are going to be changing over time. I don't have a crystal ball to exactly say. I mean, slowly over time, we've found ways to make sure that we still have meaning and connection with patients. Maybe it's that we're able to really focus on the patients that need extra time because of health literacy issues. And those patients that are more health literate and independent, we don't need to spend time on them. So instead of, and I'm going to get to this a little bit, but instead of dwelling on the change in our interactions with patients, flip it. Let's think about the bright side to it. And maybe that is one advantage. We're able to spend more time with the people that need more of us. It's a great question. But along those lines, we have chatbots here today in healthcare. It's not just in pharmacy, but certainly in pharmacy as well. Conversations that we used to have with patients can be put into an algorithm. And patients are asking questions, and they're being asked questions. Chatbots can ask questions, they can answer questions. They can even, in an automated way, create a clinical note in the electronic health record or pharmacy information system. They can make us more efficient, but at the same time, they do decrease some of the patient engagement that we used to have. They can also send reminders to patients. And when you think about a chatbot, we've all had good and bad experiences with chatbots, I'm sure. And sometimes we don't even realize we're using a chatbot, and we are. Those are the good experiences. When designed well, chatbots are generally well received and accepted by patients. And in some situations, when compared to standard of care, they result in better outcomes when using a chatbot. So this first citation I have here, the Tensio bot, is one such example. So in this particular randomized controlled trial, they randomized patients to either a chatbot or standard of care. And the goal was to try to improve self-managed in-house blood pressure checking. And what they found was that patients were generally accepting of the chatbot for most things, and that compared to standard of care, patients in the chatbot arm actually had better knowledge of blood pressure and better technique when it came to checking their blood pressure. So it's one concrete example of chatbots being effective. The other article here is just a really nice review if anybody's looking for more information. So yes, automation is in some ways decreasing the amount of patient engagement we have. We don't have to touch necessarily every patient anymore, but we are able to spend more time with certain patients that do need it. And it's not that all of our work is going to be replaced with automation. We need to think about the bright side and what does this freeing up of our time allow us to do? It allows us to focus on other things. It allows us to maximize our scope of practice, to really dig in rather than spending our time doing mundane, iterative tasks. We can really focus on those things that stretch our brain muscle and stretch our capacity to really be able to have an impact on patients that we want to have. Now, today's patient is also different. Our patients are so much more engaged because of the data that they have available to them. It's exciting. So first, we have the 21st Century Cures Act, which just went into effect yesterday. And what that means is that patients have ready access to their very own electronic health record data in near real time in most instances. So they have direct access to their data, which creates transparency in a more engaged patient. And we know when we have more engaged patients, that leads to better outcomes. Also, with the increase in use of medical devices and wearables, whether it's our traditional continuous glucose monitor, or it's something maybe more innovative like Apple's smartwatch that can check a patient's QT interval, it presents new data sources to us as clinicians, but also allows patients to be more engaged in the day-to-day of their health. Something like QT interval, that is something that helps, having that data, that security helps us feel more confident in safely managing our patient. Also, with the rise in social media, use of social media, that presents a brand new data source, health data source potentially for us to monitor drugs. But on the flip side, it also allows patients an opportunity to practice in healthcare related crowdsourcing. So in this respect, patients literally review us. They vet us as clinicians and pharmacies and decide if they want to come see us. Just like we write reviews on washing machines, they write reviews on us now. But they also use these reviews to try to determine if they want to start a medication that we recommend, or if some purple hair that they're experiencing right after they started their new diabetes medication might in fact be related to the drug. They go here to see what other people are saying. So it's a valuable source of information and something that we need to be mindful of. It changes the way that we practice. Patients are our customers. So increased transparency for patients to have access to data, but also with the increase in use of devices and social media, we have new and exciting data sources as well. So with devices, we have this information in real time, potentially, and it's continuous data. This type of data allows us to be more proactive instead of reactive. So much of healthcare is after the fact, after something goes wrong. But now we have a chance to get ahead of it and be more preventive and continuous in how we provide care. So when you think about pairing artificial intelligence with devices, data from devices and data from social media, the outcomes, we have so many different potentials. We know that to really understand the safety of a drug as clinicians, we need lots of post-marketing surveillance data in real world situations with all the messiness that comes with it. So many times drugs go to the market after the rigorous randomized controlled trials and we're still learning about them. Now we have more data from different sources and tools to be able to use that data. When you think about social media, it represents it's a big data source and it's heterogeneous, lots of diversity, lots of patients, and exciting, it contains data from the patient's perspective. If we're practicing patient-centered medicine, it's important to know when something is valued by a patient, and that type of information, that qualifier, can come through social media data sources. Now you might be saying, okay, well, that's a bunch of unstructured free text in social media, and there's slang and there's errors. So how do we make sense of that? Well, with artificial intelligence tools, such as natural language processing, we can configure a model to actually transform that data into meaningful, structured, discrete information that we can then analyze. So we can get rid of all the messiness and make sense of it. Also with artificial intelligence, when we have these big data sources, we can use machine learning, which is a type of artificial intelligence, to identify safety concerns related to drugs before we even know that there's something that we need to look into. And that's a form of unsupervised machine learning. You don't have to have an idea a priori of what the side effects or concerns are. You can use artificial intelligence to discover that and then explore further. So the potential for us to be able to monitor drug safety is very exciting. A good example of integrating artificial intelligence with social media as a data source is Google Flu Trends. Many of you have probably heard of this, but there's a reason I'm bringing it up. What they did was they evaluated instances in which patients, the lay public, would type in Google search box for things of flu-like symptoms. They looked at all of those instances and they evaluated it. And what they found was that they could accurately estimate the current level of weekly influenza activity in each region of the US with a reporting lag of about 1 day, which was 2 weeks faster than what the CDC was able to do. And the CDC is our gold standard. So this is exciting. We can predict and we can respond and we can react so much quicker to try to curtail flu. But while it is exciting, it really did become a poster child example of a big data failure because over time the technology changed and the model didn't account for it. What changed was when you would type in the Google search box, they started to add new technology that would predict what you were going to say. And so with that change, it skewed the data, so the model no longer performed well. And so what happened was it inaccurately identified flu 100 out of 108 weeks and entirely missed the 2009 swine flu epidemic. So my reason for bringing this up is we do need to be cautious when relying on these things. And it taught us a lot about the checks and measures that we need to enact to make sure that these models, these predictive models from artificial intelligence, are accurate and reliable. And today, we have many examples of applying artificial intelligence to different data sources successfully. And the past year with the COVID pandemic is a great example of how artificial intelligence has been applied time and time again successfully to help us manage this issue. So the first article here, they use the Internet of Intelligent Things. So essentially big data, which includes social media, includes Siri in your house, all sorts of different data sources. And by applying artificial intelligence to it, it was able to help prevent the spread of COVID-19. The other article here used a form of machine learning to predict who needed ventilation and who didn't, which helped us prioritize our scarce resources. So there are good examples of artificial intelligence being used. There are many, many, many. And while we're still learning more about how to capitalize on the exciting potential of artificial intelligence, it's here, and it probably is here to stay. I shouldn't say anything absolute in a talk like this. And so we should use it. We should automate. We need to keep up. But we also need to be cautious. So cautiously automate and be curious. Ask questions. What's most important is we avoid this concept of a black box, which is often stated in reference to artificial intelligence, especially when we're thinking about machine learning. What's important is that when we automate, when we use these models, that we understand where the recommendation is coming from, we know the why, and we know what the evidence is to support it. That's what's most important, and that's what's going to protect you from a liability perspective and protect your patient from any harm. So we have talked about flat, fast, and smart. But now we're also starting to think about precise. And so some have forecasted that this is the next wave where we start to get to precision medicine. And to a degree, and many of you on the call actually are involved in pharmacogenomics, to a degree, we're already doing some precision medicine, personalizing care based on an individual patient's genetic makeup. And so here at the university, this first article is describing what we have done to get pharmacogenomics into everyday clinical practice. So tailoring drug therapy based on a given patient's own genes. And I don't know about you all, but when I was in pharmacy school, I was really jazzed about pharmacogenomics, but it was out here. It was something that we didn't even know if it was going to come into reality or if it was just going to stay in the lab, but it is here. And now we're doing it, and I'm involved in it, and it's exciting. But what's next? What's next is bringing together an individual patient's genetic makeup with their specific environment and lifestyle, and then leveraging big data and artificial intelligence to truly tailor drug therapy to a given individual based on all of those messy, contextual, evolving factors. And who knows, maybe patients start printing their medications with 3D printers at home. Yes, that sounds very pie in the sky, but I mean, just think about it. We never imagined that there would be self-driving cars, but they're here. So what is next? And perhaps the elephant is in the room is, can robots take our jobs? And as Thomas Friedman, a New York Times columnist said, indeed, robots can take your job. But if we're smart, they can also guide you to and define your next job. Technology automation might be taking over aspects of your job or your life slowly and surely, but they can't replace us. So think about what makes us uniquely human that they can't do. Focus on that tacit knowledge. There's things that can't be put into an algorithm. There's many, many things. But in order to do this and prevent robots and automation from taking our jobs, we have to adapt. Adaptation is key. Remember Moore's law. We have to look to the future. Certainly we don't have a crystal ball and we can't predict it, but we can do our best to anticipate it by being aware of what's currently happening and always asking questions. Something that we also need to do is learn to unlearn. So we need to avoid the status quo and the old adage of this is the way we've always done it, so it must be okay. We need to not rely on that because as we go through all of these industrial revolutions, we know that that doesn't always hold true. And that's where we are today. I hope my examples demonstrate that. So we need to not be stuck to how we've always done things. And we need to learn and learn fast. Let's leverage those information sources that we have available at our fingertips that are automated for us to learn faster. We also need to really focus on, again, what makes us human, that technology can't replace, which is our ability to be creative, innovative thinkers. And don't forget the importance of soft skills, whether it's communication, responsibility, teamwork, leadership, being a self-starter, all of those things a computer can't replace. And those things we need to make sure we focus on. They'll always continue to be imperative. And finally, when you look at the jobs that are available and that are on the horizon, almost all of them require skill in data, understanding the strengths and limitations of data and how to apply it. So skills in data, I think, are very important for the future of pharmacy. It doesn't mean that you have to know how to create a machine learning algorithm or understand the inner workings of artificial intelligence, but knowing the power and limitations of data. And as Abraham Lincoln said, the best way to predict the future is to create it. I love this. So any of the current and former students out there have all seen this slide at least once. So I encourage you all to be disruptive. We don't have a crystal ball, but we can do our best to get as close to predicting the future as we can. So with that, I want to share with you some of my favorite books. And I will certainly say that no idea in here is an original idea, as any idea. It always stems from somewhere. And these are my inspirations for this particular talk. Robot Proof, which is really nice when thinking about preparing for the future and being an educator. The Glass Cage, which our CMIO shared with me, and it really focuses on automation and how it's changed us and the need to avoid entire reliance. Elon Musk, I might not agree with all of his ways or principles, but he is inspiring in his career path. And then finally, my latest book, which I absolutely loved, is Adaptation Advantage. It was just released in 2020. It's fresh, it's exciting. If you are interested in exploring this area anymore, that's the book I encourage you to prioritize, Adaptation Advantage. So with that, I would really love to engage in some good conversation here, really more of a discussion. Because like I said, you might have questions for me, but I more than likely won't have the answer. I think there's lots of different ways to answer your questions, so.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Trinkley. Great presentation. We do have some questions that have come across in the chat box. And then also we have some questions that were sent by the pre-registrants. And so I can walk through a few of those if that works for you. We'll start with some of the questions that have come through the chat box. The first question has to do with the medical community and the pharmacy community and the data behind it and the technology associated with it. In my experience, I know that the pharmacy community, they have real-time data, it's online education and whatnot. In the medical side, there's a lag in data and whatnot. But so the question is how much of an issue is that in technology with the medical community lagging behind in the tech space? And just so running on a different operating system versus what's currently in place, how does that create challenges for pharmacists who are trying to maybe review data, look at some of the trends and trying to, since I come from the benefit space, just trying to ensure that we're providing the care needed to make sure that the appropriate medications are being prescribed. Did that kind of make sense?
I think so. So I think what I'm hearing is the question is, for us as pharmacists that may not have direct access to medical EHR type data, what types of problems does that pose? And the rapidity at which that data is available. So yeah, I think that's of course a great question. And I think it's a challenging one to answer because I think it depends as a pharmacist, what setting you're in. So if you are in the PBM space, unfortunately, you don't have access to more of the medical holistic care type data, which is certainly a problem. I think that it just points to the fact that we need interoperability between all of our siloed health systems, whether it's the pharmacy information system, the pharmacy benefits manager, or the electronic health record. I think slowly but surely we are getting closer to that, and there's a push for interoperability, but we're not there. Right. You know, on the flip side, I would also say as a pharmacist who works on the health system side, I have ready access in real time to EHR data, but I can't get the PBM data, and it's so frustrating.
Yeah, no, that's definitely the case. I know from personal experience, my wife's a pediatrician, and so for her to prescribe a medication, it's very difficult because the EMR platforms do not speak to one another, or at least are not real time. So, great. So the next question is, I'm gonna read this. How do ethical considerations come into play? This is related to chatbot development. Should we build an indicator for users to know that they're speaking to a chatbot? What type of transparency should we aim for, especially now that we're in this, Dr. Google world? So.
Great question as well. I don't have an answer for you. I think the more transparency we provide, the better. So many times, as consumers of healthcare, patients, take our clinician hat off, we don't even realize our data is being used for research purposes. And so same thing with patients. If we are asking patients to converse with the chatbot, I think it's respectful, even if it's not ethical, to let them know that. I think we just need to be humans to each other.
Right, no, that makes sense, The next question in our chat box has to do with pharmacogenomics, your discussion on pharmacogenomics. Do insurance companies, are they incentivized to prioritize or to discriminate against genomics? Is there anything that you've seen in that regard?
I am not the pharmacogenomics expert. I don't think I'm the best person to answer this. And I know there's many of you, I can actually see smiles on the video, that are better positioned to answer this than I am. I think there is concern that genetic information could be used against people, but I think that there are laws in place to prevent that now. But I will open it up for others to comment on that.
And I believe the lines are open if anyone wanted to chime in on that.
Dr. Marucci. Oh, go ahead, Dr. Lee.
Hi, this is Dr. Yiming Lee. Yeah, I work with Katy and the whole team on pharmacogenomics. Let me know if you can't hear me because I had Zoom issues earlier today. So there is this Genetic Information Non-Discrimination Act called GINA that was in place in 2008. So it protects our patients from, we don't get coerced to release their genetic information. So they are protected against discrimination in terms of health insurance coverage and employment. So in that sense, there is that law to protect and avoid the accidental disclosure of this information. The only exception is if they work in a very small company or they're trying to buy life insurance, then we are obligated to release that information. Yeah, but I would argue against, because we're testing pharmacogenomics as a test to determine your drug response, I would argue that it's actually beneficial for the patient to know, because you don't waste time trying medications that will work for you, and you go straight to the meds that would work for you, to avoid that time lapse and lag.
Right, no, that's a great point. And from a PBM perspective, we do provide, when we're doing clinical criteria, there is that genomic component to it to ensure that, you know, the drug is being dispensed appropriately. So for sure. Thank you for that. All right. Okay, so let's, I'm going to jump into some questions that were sent previously. And many of them had to do with just the idea of how does one become an informatic pharmacist? Basically, what classes should you take when you're a student? Are there any formal training available? And how does one, and then from a more, a pharmacist that has been in the industry for some time, how does one transition into that career of health informatics?
As one of my mentors says, it depends. It depends on where you want to go. Just like when we all decided that we wanted to be pharmacists or go in the pharmacy profession, there's so many different avenues to be a pharmacist. Well, then you layer on top of that a pharmacist informaticist, and there are infinite more potential avenues you can head down. If you want to be an informaticist that really focuses more on data science, which is really being the one to build the machine learning models and artificial intelligence, then you probably need more formal graduate level training. If you want to be someone like, say, Dr. Yi, who is on the phone, or Marucci, who is more of a clinical informaticist providing their drug knowledge to a startup in tech, then you can really, at this point, pave your own path. 20 years ago, to be a clinical pharmacist, you did not need a residency. Now you do. And right now where we're at in pharmacy informatics, so often you can pave your own path and create it yourself. So much of it, at least for me, I do have a formal graduate degree, but while I was working on that, it was just getting my foot in the door, being nosy, sticking myself places where I wanted to be, and getting people to trust me, focusing on the soft skills. So you can really create your own path right now. But I will remind you, there's so many different directions you can go in this field, which is exciting. It's a little bit nerve-wracking for us as type A pharmacists who like to have very prescriptive, like this is what you do and you'll get this at the end. But it's exciting. There's lots of different avenues and ways to get there. And I hope to actually have a panel for people where we can bring lots of different clinical informaticists on board and do a Q&A about paths at some point.
No, that's great. And you are the lone informatics.
I think you froze, Dr. Padre. Oh, you froze there for a minute. I think you're unfrozen now, though.
The question was, you are the lone pharmacist in the informatics world. How would someone who's interested, either a student or a professional that's been out in the industry for a while, how would they connect with you? And what is it that they can do to grab your attention? Because I'm sure you're busy.
Just reach out. I encourage you to reach out. I love this space. I hope my enthusiasm rubbed off on you a bit today. But email me. It's katy.trinkley@cuanschutz.edu. Happy to chat. I might not have all the answers. I rarely do, but I'll do my best to try to point you in the right direction. Because this space is so new, I struggle because there's not a lot of very formalized experiences or training opportunities. APHA just had its digitalhealth.rx session, which was a day talking about digital health intersecting with pharmacy. So those types of opportunities pop up here and there. There are some smaller certificate programs, but again, it kind of depends on where you want to go. So just reach out.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. Let's see. So I'm gonna grab a few other questions that we came across with the pre-registrants. Let's see. Oh, so one of the things that my background's in pharmacy, formulary development and whatnot. And what we're seeing now is a trend towards digital therapeutics cover formulary status of an app versus on the preferred tier versus an excluded tier. What are your thoughts on that that approach? And really, you basically, if you have a digital app that's on the preferred tier, then it's a coverable item. Otherwise, you'll go through the medical necessity process and whatnot. So, what are your thoughts on that?
I think it's great. I think that if we know that the physical medications that we ingest have potential side effects, there potentially could be side effects of digital therapies like virtual reality or gaming to treat different conditions, certainly, but different types of issues. But I also think that the more we can diversify our options to treat patients and find the safest alternative, the better. In terms of formulary for different types of apps, Dr. Whitley Yee is on the line, and I know she's probably eager to say something. So this is something that we've incorporated into the curriculum at the School of Pharmacy, thanks to Dr. Yee's help, because we do think it's the way of the future to have apps on formularies and digital therapeutics as part of the future and things that pharmacists are going to be involved in. So I do think it's a good thing. Others' thoughts?
Yeah, please, anyone on the call, if you have any experience with digital therapeutics, or what your thoughts are on that. So an example could be if I'm a diabetic and there's an application that helps me manage my diabetes. That would be an example of that. So if anyone has had experience in that, we'd love to hear your feedback or your experience with that. Okay. We can save that for the next time. And really, one of the questions that I thought was interesting as it relates to medication adherence, how has technology helped with medication adherence? And the whole idea of medical, we know PBMs send out prescriptions every 30 days based on your refill cycles. So how can we assist leveraging technology to assist with adherence rather than just sending it out every 30 days or 90 days?
Yeah, so I think it depends where you sit as a pharmacist. If you're a pharmacist in a PBM versus if you're a pharmacist that's in a community pharmacy or a clinical pharmacist in one of the clinics, the ways that you can help your patients vary. But I think finding a way to engage your patient and letting them know the broad diversity of different types of innovations, whether it's software or an app or whatever it is that can support their medication adherence journey, because it is a journey. We as pharmacists, anybody that's had to take an antibiotic or takes a pill or 2 pills a day, we're the medication experts and we still mess up. So just engage your patients. Try to get them exposed to different opportunities, resources. Maybe a PBM sends out a list of different resources. I think it's maybe a bit more challenging for a PBM to connect on a personal level with patients, but finding creative ways to at least get the information in front of them.
That's great. I'm just doing a time check. We have about 5 minutes to go before the end of the hour. And I promised you that we'd leave and we'd have it completed in an hour. So I wanted to thank everybody for their great questions. We'll certainly review them and send them back, maybe through a Q&A template, and then send back some of the questions we weren't able to get to today. So I wanted to take this opportunity to thank Dr. Trinkley for this really enlightening presentation. The CU Pharmacy Alumni Association is really proud to have experts like yourself host these events. And I also want to thank everyone that's taken time out of their evening to join us. We do look forward. We'll have plenty of more of these on a go-forward basis. We'll have one in the spring next semester in the fall. So we'll have details on that coming out later. So the other items I want to mention is, in the meantime, we hope that we do have an upcoming Happy and Healthy Hour event sponsored monthly through the CU program, Alumni Relations program. These will continue with the next one taking place tomorrow. Dr. Cynthia Hazel will be discussing incorporating equity into professional practice and everyday life. We'll send out information on that for future Happy and Healthy Hours. From an alumni board perspective, this is nomination season for the association. So we are looking to engage alumni to lead the Pharmacy Alumni Association. So if you know of that one person, please feel free to nominate them for the Alumni Association. And then the other thing is the Alumni Association Awards. Last year we presented a couple of awards, one to the Distinguished Alumni Award, which was sent to Deborah Devereaux from 1976. And then the other one was to Kevin Kerr, who's a Horizon Alumni Award recipient. So we are looking to get nominations for those two awards. Lastly, we're planning another homecoming event. And more than likely it will be virtual, as we hopefully we won't need to do virtual anymore. But we will certainly be planning that for our next homecoming, which is actually the 110th anniversary of the school. So we encourage you to pass the word on to others and celebrating the occasion. That is all we have for formal presentations for tonight. So we do have a couple minutes. If anyone has any final questions, we can certainly address them. Or if not, we can sign off for tonight and discuss later.
Thank you.
All right, well, thank you, everyone. I know I appreciate the time you joining us on your evenings and afternoons, and for me, it's almost 8:30 in the evening. So, but that's okay. It's a great presentation to be part of, and thank you, Dr. Trinkley, for that.
Thank you, Dr. Padre. I appreciate your moderation and your help today.
All right, we will sign off, and thank you, everybody.
Thank you.